I'm just about done installing the Banks Monster Ram and Technicooler, so I figured I'd chronicle some of the things that I did. So here we go. The Technicooler is a lot bigger than the old Intercooler. So as you're starting to pull things apart, of course Banks says to come over here and take the air box out. You see there's the new boost tube. But one of the things that I did, and you can see right here, you can see all the way to the ground, I went ahead and took out the wheel well liner and took off the wheel. You got to take off the wheel to get the liner out. But that made it really easy to get to this boost tube. And so what I did is I did the same thing on the other side. Now, I didn't think about doing this right away, but I had to take off my Banks scoop for the Ram Air box because that's what was sitting right here. And it just made sense to take off both sides. So once we got that stuff out, of course, you got to get the intercooler out. And the intercooler came out pretty easily. You take off this brace. I really suggest going ahead and taking off this brace. I've heard people do it without taking the brace out, and it makes it 100 times easier. So the intercooler popped right out, but getting it back in, getting the Technicooler in, the Technicooler is a lot longer, taller, and a lot wider. So notice there's this bracket right here, the bumper bracket that was right in the way. So I grabbed my handy dandy jack and I went under here. And since the liner's out, it was really easy to get to those bolts. There's 2 bolts into the frame and then 3 bolts into the bracket and the bumper. And that bracket pops right out. And that made the Technicooler a lot easier to get in. And if you notice, there is just not much clearance right here, getting everything situated in here. So that was one of the things that made it doable. Once I got the Technicooler in, of course you change out your brackets. I would move this bracket before you try to put the Technicooler in, because once you set this down, then you can put this bolt right in and it just holds your AC condenser for you. I did this by myself, so when I was hanging the AC condenser, I went ahead and hung it off my grill, and that worked out pretty good. So, brackets out, Technicooler's in, put the bracket back in, and then I'm trying to get the boost tube in, and I noticed that there's just not enough clearance for the hump. So I took this washer fluid bolt out right here, and that gave me a little bit of clearance. And then I took out the fan shroud bolt that goes right here, and that gave me enough clearance to get the hump through. And then of course I had to rearrange the clamps from what Banks said it was, just because there's almost no clearance in there. But basically that made it really easy to get that boost tube in there. And of course I worked from the bottom since I have the wheel well liner out, and then, you know, came to the Banks Monster Ram, and I noticed that there was almost no clearance when I put these studs in. So one of the other things that I do that not a lot of people talk about was I just took this cover off. It's really easy to pop off. It's just 4 bolts. You can just pop those out, and of course your plug right here, take that out, and this cover pops right off, and then you can get to your studs really easily, and everything just mounts right up. But I think that had I not done those things, this would have been a really tough install, because there's just no room with all the larger equipment. It's really tight in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and button everything up. Hopefully this helps somebody out. When I went and started this project, I didn't find a lot of videos on installing the Technicooler, so it was a lot of trial and error trying to get this in, and it's been challenging. That when they say it's a 4 out of 5 scale on challenging, the technicality of it and the parts and pieces, it's really simple, but getting it in there with the clearances you have is really tough, and you're gonna need more than the tools that they tell you, and a lot of coffee. So hopefully this helps somebody out.